So as you might know, over the past couple of months, we have been meeting with sales or marketing leaders like Chantelle, and we're inviting people who are looking for their next role to jump on video. And we dive into best practices that work in sales or marketing that might be applied to your job search. And one of the things that Chantelle has been doing a really great job of over the past couple of months in particular is building a brand on LinkedIn and actually starting to get more active posting. And I know Chantelle, like that sounds like something that's like, yeah, of course, it's not that serious, guys, like just post. But that's very, very difficult. And it's something that both Andy and Erlinda had talked about, kind of finding that balance between like, am I applying for jobs? Am I networking? What does that actually mean? How do I get started? Like, how do I just make sense of all this LinkedIn hype that's going out? So I just wanted to invite Chantelle to kind of jump in and maybe share your story and spend some time with each of you guys one-on-one and see if we can help other people.
Sounds good to me.
So let's go, maybe we'll start with like ladies first. Maybe Erlinda, you can kind of give us a background of like how you've been using LinkedIn, where you're at in your search, how have things been going, and where you're at, and how's it going?
Yeah, sure. So I've had a LinkedIn account forever, but this is probably the first time I'm really diving in to use it. I recently left Uber as part of the massive layoffs, and my career coach kind of has been encouraging me to build it out. So right now I'm in the process of just getting endorsements and kind of updating my profile, and then trying to kind of look at what jobs are out there and just meet people. Truthfully, I'm kind of teeter-tottering between my next position being marketing or in diversity inclusion. So I'm trying to figure out, because I'm pursuing both paths, like how do I even like update my profile to reflect that? And am I doing the right thing or not by showcasing both? So yeah, it's kind of where I'm at now.
So I guess Chantelle, like I'll kind of let you take the lead. Maybe you can just start by introducing some of the stuff that you've been talking about. I know that you came out with like a LinkedIn strategy guide and you've been posting a lot about this. Like, what have you learned so far in the last few months?
Yeah, so I have been active on social media for a really long time. I usually focused on all of the other platforms other than LinkedIn until I would say a few years ago, I was looking for a new job. And I was like, well, LinkedIn is the place to go if you're looking for a job. And I think that a lot of people have that perception about LinkedIn, that if you're looking for a job, you go to LinkedIn. Once you're done and you're set, then you can just sort of leave it. It's like a resume. You just leave it until you're looking again, and then you go back to it. But just in sort of testing and feeling things out, I found that LinkedIn has a lot more potential than that. For example, I have a website that I have a full-time position. I have always had like a full-time position, but I've also been building a personal brand on the side. I have a website. I offer consultancy services, and LinkedIn has been pivotal in helping me to gain traction there. I've met almost all of my clients and people that I've worked with through LinkedIn, just a supplemental business. It hasn't even been my main bread and butter. It's just something that I've been able to keep going on the side. And LinkedIn has been so crucial in that strategy. As far as my recent activity on LinkedIn, so when I got my last position, I had just had a baby. So I kind of took a big step back. And then this year I was like, why did I stop posting on LinkedIn? And I was reading all of this awesome content. And I was like, you know what? I could do this. Like, everyone talks about impostor syndrome. You kind of have like this like feeling like, who's going to want to listen to me? Am I really like qualified to speak up and to post as an expert on whatever topic? And the truth is, if you look at most people on there, your background is probably just as valuable, if not more so, than a lot of the people who are posting as thought leaders. Like, I look at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not like some like genius or whatever. But when I post something, people have just this awesome reaction. They're like, wow, I didn't think about it that way. Or, this has been really valuable. I'm really benefiting from the information that you're sharing. So you don't think that you're qualified, or you might be hesitant to position yourself as an expert in whatever field, but nobody on there got permission to start posting. Nobody on there had someone say, okay, you're an expert, go ahead and you can start. You've got the blue check, go ahead and start posting to people. There's no sort of gatekeeper there. If you have unique thoughts on something, then I would encourage you to share it, because something that you're thinking may benefit somebody else and they may not have thought about that. So you may bring value to somebody else that you didn't see as valuable yourself, because it's just something in your head that you automatically know, but everybody else doesn't know what you know. So I would highly recommend for that not to be a barrier to you starting to share your expertise or your thoughts. I would say everybody on there has had some bouts with imposter syndrome and feeling like, who would listen to me, or why should I be speaking about this? So you just have to sort of build up the confidence in yourself and sort of be your own cheerleader and get on there and just start talking. So I guess I'll talk about a little bit about my strategy this year. Do you want me to start with that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is hopefully going to benefit Andy and Erlinda, but where did you start? How do you go about figuring out what you're going to post? Is it something that just comes to you and you just kind of get it out, or are you planning it?
So for a long time, I kind of watched. I was like a silent observer, and I was just sort of consuming all of the content that I saw. I realized this year the importance of not just letting your network build itself. So previously, I would just accept connection requests that came my way. I would connect with people that I went to school with, that I worked with. This year was the first year when I started, or maybe last year, I started being really intentional about the people that I add to my network, and sort of visualizing, okay, how do I want my network to grow? Who do I want in my network? What kind of content do I want to see that'll benefit me and inspire me in developing content? So I kind of have like a twofold approach there. So I add a significant number of people who are also in my space, who are marketers, who post a lot of marketing content, because those are valuable to me as a marketer to kind of grow in my field, and learn about what other people are doing and what they're talking about, what's trending. But I also follow a lot of people who I have interest in as customers or as an audience. So people who are looking for marketing expertise, or people who tie in with, right now I work for a company called Herman, people who tie in with who we're trying to sell to. So a lot of people in the D&I space, in the HR space, IO psychology. So I have multiple streams I have two different audiences that I'm trying to build up there. So that's really helped me in setting a goal for adding people to my network. I was also kind of picky before about who I added. This year, I kind of stopped doing that. I don't see the harm in adding more people to your network. I don't think people should be as picky as they necessarily try to be. There may be people who try to spam you or whatever, but if you don't respond, or if you just like, I haven't had a huge problem with getting like a lot of spam or a lot of abusive messages in my inbox. I found more value in adding a broad range of people. You see a lot of diversity of thought in your feed, the more people that you add from different backgrounds, and by not limiting it to whoever you think should be in your circle, you could let in a viewpoint that you never would have thought of. So I add anybody. It also helps you broaden your reach. So a lot of times the people that you see with viral posts who consistently get hundreds of likes, thousands of likes, if you look at how many followers they have or how many connections that they have thousands. So they're automatically, their one post going to 30,000 connections, which is the maximum number of connections you can have on LinkedIn, versus you posting something and it's going to 500 or 1,000. They're automatically going to get way higher engagement numbers, even for content that's not that good. They could post something that's just like, hey guys, I saw someone post this week. I have nothing to post today. Haha. And they had hundreds of likes on it. And it's just because they have a ton of followers. They've built a relationship with their network. People are used to just kind of liking their stuff. Plus a ton of people are on LinkedIn right now, bored at home. So if now, anytime you were going to try to hit some high engagement numbers and go viral, it would be right now, because everybody's got attention to give and got time to spare.
I love that. Yeah, Erlinda, would love to just hear some of your questions and maybe how you're thinking about LinkedIn, how you've been using it.
Yeah, I guess like I said earlier, I am really, trying to land that next role. Currently chasing two different paths, one being marketing. I have a pretty strong background in partnerships and events. And then the other path is diversity inclusion. So I think right now, like I'm just trying to figure out if I'm applying to both of those types of roles, like how do I build my profile? Like, am I putting double the content out there? Should I want to make sure that I look like that, appealing to the recruiters, but I just don't know what the right way is if I'm chasing two different paths.
So it can be a little tough to have two different content themes that you're going after. Like I said, I have multiple audiences, but I, for the most part, am posting marketing content. I've noticed that as I've started focusing on content that relates to my industry, I've started engaging more with one pool of LinkedIn users in my network, but I've also seen a drop off in engagement from another pool that I used to engage with. For example, previously I worked for a company where we were helping to manage data quality. So I had a lot of CRM administrators and people who are experts in data. I don't really get that much engagement from them anymore, whereas before they were the main ones liking and consuming my content. So now I've kind of seen a shift because my content theme has changed. And I think that there's some value in being consistent with the messaging that you're putting out, because people will start to look for your content because they know what to expect. If you start having content that speaks two different languages almost, so to speak, then people will not necessarily, they won't feel that they can reliably go to you and just like your content without thinking. I'm sure there are people who just like stuff that I post because they know that I talk about a certain thing and I maintain a certain level of quality in what I post, so they feel comfortable in just liking that. Whereas if I was posting sometimes about marketing and sometimes about accounting, then they might pause for a second, or it might impede the relationship that I'm trying to build with certain people. I have tested that a little bit. I have done marketing messaging and then also D&I focused messaging, because my company specializes in cognitive diversity, but I found more success when I'm consistent and just focused. And it also makes developing content much easier. So I develop content mainly on, I take one day a week, Sunday, and I kind of map out what content that I want to post throughout the week, because there's a certain window of time that you have to post on LinkedIn when you'll be most successful. I find posting as soon as I wake up to be the sweet spot. I get the highest levels of engagement when I post as soon as I wake up within like a 2-hour window. So if I'm not ready and I don't have something ready to post, a lot of times I'll miss that window because I'll still be like thinking or coming up with something or editing my content. Whereas if I've got an idea of what I want to post, then it's pretty much set. As far as attracting recruiters and stuff for your profile, using specific keywords around what you want to attract to your, I guess the interest that you want to attract will help out a lot. So if you start using a lot of terms around marketing and D&I on your profile, especially in your headline, which is going to be the first thing that people see, and then in your about section, people will find you much more easily through searches. So you just have to optimize those two spaces to use the keywords, same as you would with a resume that you're going to run through. That would be run through AI talent searches. You would do sort of a similar thing with your profile. Just make it as interesting as possible, because there's a lot of people. And so if you do something that's kind of creative or shows a little bit more personality, people will, I think, gravitate toward you a little bit more, because they'll be like, oh, she's got a little spark of something. I'm interested in finding out more.
Cool. That makes sense.
So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of need to choose one or the other, at least for a certain amount of time, and then have all of your content be consistent towards that. I know it might not be maybe what you want to hear, Linda, like, you know, because look, like even if we look at, let's say the headline, so it's like marketing, diversity and inclusion, program management. What we've seen, and similar to what Chantelle is mentioning, is like in today's world, especially, like people want to be able to just be like, this is your box. Not that it's a bad thing, but like I should know what I'm getting. And I should know that you can fill this very specific need for me, right? And all of your content and all of your messaging and your resume and your profile and everything should just follow that same story. Otherwise, there's like always that question that's gonna end up coming up towards the end of the interview process when they're like, you know what, let's go with this person because they match exactly. Like the story makes more sense. It seems less risky. Let's just go with that. It's like same thing like in marketing, you know, unless you are really good at combining the two of them together somehow, right? Like working on marketing initiatives that increase DNI across brands or something, right? Like if you can tie them together and then maybe talk a little bit about both because you are passionate about both, like great, but it has to be a cohesive story, not like this and this and this, and they're all separate things.
I was going to say maybe multicultural marketing. That's a big one. Speaking to different communities and talking about how you can bring value there. But like you're saying, I wouldn't split the two. Although one way that you could kind of still dabble in the other side is if you add those connections in D&I or in marketing, whichever one that's going to play secondary, and then you just engage with their content. So when they're posting, going and posting on, you know, commenting and building relationships that way rather than making that your primary voice. So using that as like a way to leverage the relationships that you have with other contacts.
I love that. That's good. And that's also like, that brings up another point, because a lot of people will ask, so like your headline is basically like the first thing that people see. That's your message, right? And a lot of people will say like, should we connect? Should I send a personalized message with a connection request? Right? And there's two different schools of thought. Some people are like, yeah, you should do it every time. Some people are like, hell no, never do it. I lean towards never do it, just because you get them out faster. Like usually when people see a message, it's like, hey, like, you know, hope you're doing well, or like came across your profile, let's stay connected, or, oh, you know, whatever. And then 2 seconds later, it's like, do you want to have a 15-minute call? Or I would love to learn more about you, or do you need help in this area, right? So there's always like some sales pitch behind a message. So instinctively people are thinking like, oh man, here's a message. It means the sales pitch is coming. Whether it's coming or not, that's what they're thinking. So remove that friction, do the connect request. They're going to see your headline and it's going to say, you know, passionate about like D&I marketing, or, you know, helping brands with their D&I initiatives, or whatever kind of your like one-liner is, like that's your message, right? So they see it, they connect, and then a lot of people ask, do I then follow up with a message? And the answer is like, you don't have to. What you can do is go on to their posts, go like their posts, comment on their posts, like figure out how to get those touch points outside of the inbox so that you're not just like flooding them with requests all the time. And it's a much less intrusive way of like building a relationship with somebody.
Yeah, like I'm not that popular and I get a lot of messages, and it's not that I don't appreciate them. It's just that it takes time out of your day to then go and check you've already got your inbox, your professional inbox, your personal inbox, and then have a LinkedIn inbox that you have to also check and vet through and come up with messages. It's just like, oh, this is like an extra job. I almost sometimes wish I could shut off my inbox and just post on my, you know, comment on my posts and we'll talk that way. Cause I mean, then you're also kind of adding value to them by commenting on something that they thought of or they're thinking about at that moment. You're kind of organically, naturally building a conversation rather than being like, hey, how are you? Good. Yeah.
The other thing I would mention is the storm is crazy. The other thing I would mention is like just hit my window, like, geez. So the question I have for you, Chantelle, is you mentioned like sitting down on Sunday, planning out your posts. Are there a certain number of posts that you're aiming to make every week, or is it like pretty fluid?
I try to post once a day. You'll find that all of the algorithms, all of the social media platforms reward you for more content, because more content is better for them, because more content means more people staying longer on their platform. So the more you post, the higher your engagement will go. Although LinkedIn, it's kind of unique. It's one of the few platforms where if you post too much, too close together, you do get penalized, it feels like. So if you post your stuff too close together, for some reason, one of them will suffer. It'll choose one and like raise that to the top, and the other one, it'll just sort of I've posted, I've tried posting, for example, once at like 8 a.m., once at noon or like 11 a.m. The second one almost always gets 0 likes or engagement, and I don't know why. So I find that a lot of people in my network say try for 12-hour difference. So once at 8 a.m., once at 8 p.m.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that also might depend on like how many followers you have in that ratio and like what your
Right.
engagement has been, and like different things that LinkedIn talks about with like that first hour of engagement, dwell
Yeah.
time, like how much time are people spending as they're scrolling through. That's why you see a lot of these like one sentence, like all the way down. Because
Guilty.
yeah, I mean, but it is easier to read that way too, right? Like your
Mm.
storytelling, it's not these like big paragraphs of text. Avoid sharing like articles, avoid sharing other people's posts. Those are things that essentially like don't get as much engagement as just sharing like text posts that, are very just like boom, 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 hard hitting, couple hashtags, couple emojis.
And it's all a test. I mean, I find that there isn't like one set. There are like some general guidelines that I like to follow, but sometimes, especially on the weekends when I normally don't get very high engagement anyway, because the weekends are normally, LinkedIn is kind of a Monday to Friday business hours kind of platform. On the weekends, sometimes I'll test out something else and be like, well, what if I use 10 hashtags today? What if I do post a picture? What if I put a link in my whatever? Like this past weekend, I was like, you know what, I'll post something silly. I posted about like, if for anybody who remembers MySpace, if you could have a top 8 on LinkedIn, who would it be? And I didn't expect that much engagement, but it had one of the highest rates of engagement that I've had on any post, but it was all comments, which if you can get comments, those are more weighty than just likes. LinkedIn sees a lot of comments and will say, oh, this is a really valuable piece of content. Let's elevate it to more eyes because people must really get some value out of it. So the more ways that you can encourage people to comment back to you in the form of asking questions, telling people to give you feedback, asking people to tag their friends if, those types of social media posts, tag a friend in the comments if, whatever. Those are really good ways at increasing your rates of engagement.
I mean, I steal this from Jake Dunlap all the time, but he says that LinkedIn is the biggest networking event in the world, and it's basically on 24/7. Like people do post on Saturday, Sunday, and you can be a part of that conversation, right? And it doesn't have to be like the most profound thing in the world, but it's something that can not only help you land a job, but also help you in your job, help you build your network. So the next time either you're not happy or something happens that's out of your control, like I would imagine that like if Chantelle, like, tomorrow or the next week was like, hey guys, I'm looking for an opportunity. Like I want to work in marketing. She's just going to get flooded and her inbox is going to be like, I haven't met Chantelle before. I haven't watched her, in a marketing meeting. I haven't seen like how she performs on the job, but she would get an interview, right? And I'm sure she can get an interview in a lot of different places just because people feel like they know her and she's being a marketer on LinkedIn. So naturally we are intrigued to learn more. So that's kind of like what you want to accomplish through LinkedIn, I think, more than anything else. That's kind of where it begins. Linda, is that helpful? Are there any other questions? Like, what do you think about that? Like, does that help you at least like figure out like, okay, like, am I bought into this LinkedIn thing? Am I going to start posting? Like, how are you thinking about that?
I think, I'm bought in. I was bought in before this. I think, it sounds like from your guys's, advice, it sounds like I need to pick a decision whether I want to go marketing or DNI. So I think that's the bigger challenge then for me. I was hoping to come out of this to find a way to be able to work both paths. But if it doesn't sound like that's the case, then I think it's a larger question for me than, getting bought into LinkedIn. It's now, which direction do I take?
And I wouldn't say that there's no way you could possibly do it if you do want to keep both options open, then that's fine. But it's sort of like, you know, you only have a finite amount of energy and time each day. And by splitting your focus, you're not really going all in on either one. So you're not putting your all into one direction. So you're not going to go as far in either direction. Whereas if you focus on one and just go 150% on one, you're going to go much further in that area and see how far you can go and probably make a lot more progress than if you split your focus and are trying to juggle two different audiences, two different messaging points. So it's probably just better just to focus in on the one that you really, really are passionate about, which in the end, you're going to have to make a choice between one of them anyway. If you get two different job offers, you'd still have to pick which one you really wanted to go. Although, I mean, what we suggested before, if you can figure out a way to tie them together in a really organic way, multicultural marketing, I think, is a really big field right now.
Yeah. I just don't see as many roles. I either see D&I, like plain D&I program manager, or plain marketing program manager role. So I think for me, it doesn't look like, at least not in Chicago, there isn't an interest in it, at least not now.
It may be something you can bring up in the interview, like, hey, I'm going after this marketing role, but this is what I'm bringing to the table as well. So I'm bringing this understanding of today's market and how diverse it is and how important that aspect is right now, especially with everything going on in the world. So you'll get that benefit if you hire me, that I have that background, I have that understanding, and I'll be able to bring that to your strategy meetings.
Yeah, it could be good too when you like have the like intro interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager too, like when you have the opportunity to ask questions and then kind of like talk about it a little bit further to at least leave that lasting impression.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call out.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So Andy, bring us up to speed. So I know that you had talked about a little bit about LinkedIn. You're on the sales side,
Yep.
and it's interesting because we see a big difference between how people are using LinkedIn when they're in sales versus when they're in marketing. Bring us up to speed, kind of where you're at. How are things going?
Yeah. So I was caught up in a riff probably about a month ago. I was working for a small business lender called Funding Circle, and I was the sales trainer for both their Denver and San Francisco office. So I used LinkedIn all the time. I was always on it just because the people I follow just they just give really good tips out there. So when I was let go, I posted, I reached out to my network, letting them know what happened was. And then over the last 14 months in my training role, I was working on a training tip of the week. So I'm like, this is a really good opportunity to finally showcase like my YouTube channel and what I've been building over the longest time. And it took off really, really well. I got, a ton of likes, a ton of comments, and like people are still commenting on, which is great. One of the drawbacks was I used the training tip of the week. We utilize this Sandler sales methodology, which I was like kind of trained on throughout my entire career. And then Sandler reached out to me with a cease and desist saying I had to take down all my videos. So that was a little bit of it took the winds out of my sails a little bit. So what I was trying to do then, and then I was fortunate enough, I was nominated for this one blog. This person was writing top candidates for hire. So I shared that. And Chantelle, it was interesting what you said. You get more traction by posting rather than resharing. So when she posted the blog, I reshared it with a little bit of a write-up there. But like the traction, I was like, this is very interesting how I didn't get like the hits that I got, 2 weeks earlier on there. So that kind of makes sense. So what I'm really focusing on now is, I was fortunate enough to get a lot of traction with that initial post and kind of built up a pipeline and just been interviewing. So now it's just trying to balance in between, prospecting for new jobs, preparing for my interviews, and then also trying to find new jobs to keep filling up my pipeline, as well as the component of like, what can I post on LinkedIn? So when I do post on LinkedIn and when I get things figured out, I want to really kind of just target the sales and like SDR managers and, sales managers and like how we can actually help them. And I've been drafting up some ideas of like, how can I rebuild my YouTube channel? What are some blogs I can quickly write? But it's just kind of challenging of just balancing everything. And Chantelle, I think you said it best, like we have finite time in the day of like being able to successfully do that.
That's
awesome.
crazy. I
I'm
can't
looking
believe
at your
you actually
profile right now.
I can't believe you got that much traction that you actually.
I know, yeah.
I've never even.
It was like, because those were weird things. I was talking to a lot of my friends about it, and it wasn't like I was stealing proprietary information, because like they have like 49 Sandler rules. So over 49 weeks, I went one by one, and I talked about how that rule applied to our specific sales process. But still, I'm like, I don't have the time or energy or money to battle this legal battle right now.
How strange.
Yeah.
When building out content, we were talking about just now how to find inspiration for your content. I actually look to a lot of like other marketing thought leaders and, people who've published books and stuff. And I post some of their stuff, or I'll be like, look at this awesome tip, and I'll credit them at the end. Like, this was inspired by whoever, James Clear or whoever. But I've never gotten a cease and desist. So maybe I'm just not that popular. I haven't gotten that much traction yet.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, because like for sales, like I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just taking what I've learned and adding another layer to it, or just applying it to a specific thing of whatever I'm talking about. So that was a little strange, but I guess like it's just like I'm just having a hard time trying to do that balancing act of like maintaining what I've been building over here while continue to build up new foundations, because I don't know where these interviews are going to go. Like I'm getting first, second round interviews, but I don't want to all of a sudden be caught in a trap of shit, I didn't, work over here at all. So now these fell apart. So it's a very
like a full cycle sales rep right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess like, one question I have here is like, Chantelle, just based on your experience, sounds like you're doing a lot of posts. Like, do you think, like, what's your opinion on, do you think it's, better just to write posts? Do you think it's better to do quick videos, or almost even start up a podcast and like bring in different thought leaders to have a quick question to share? Like, do you have any suggestions on that?
Text-based posts do the best on LinkedIn, which I think is why it's so accessible to so many people. Anybody can write a post, whereas, not everybody can come up with the hottest dance on TikTok, or Instagram requires a lot of visual content and a steady stream of it. Twitter, you have to be very pointed in what you're posting, but LinkedIn really lets you I guess flourish with text-based. I almost do exclusively text-based posts. So just 1,300, I think, characters is the limit. I just hit that and do that every single day. I have played around with images and videos. Videos don't seem to do very well for me. Posting links to external sites does not work very well for me, which, by the way, doesn't work well on almost any social media platform. Twitter also suppresses content where you put links into the actual content. So I would recommend just sticking with text-based stuff. If you want to try out video, then I say go for it, because you get the benefit of being able to repurpose that and use it across different platforms. I do see a lot of, like, there was someone who did a video, I forgot his name, he's a LinkedIn influencer, but he did a video on the different types of Zoom personalities. And that video I've seen across multiple platforms. I just saw it on Twitter like last week. So there is benefit to your brand and in getting that traction across different channels from creating different types of multimedia.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool.
Also depends kind of where your customers are, right? Like, who are you trying to reach? Are they on YouTube? Maybe they are, but maybe they're not in the mindset of, oh, I'm looking for, to hire someone when they're on YouTube, but they are in that mindset when they're on LinkedIn. So it's just something to think about.
Also, I guess like another follow-up question, I think you were talking about, you get a lot of messages, you got a lot of LinkedIn requests in there. During my time of search, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I've joined these different communities, like I'd Hire Me. There's another one called Rev Genius. And so now, because I've joined those, people are like, hey, I just joined this, would love to connect with you, which is great. But it's one of those things I'm like, just because I'm like accepting all these new LinkedIn requests, is it going to mess up my algorithm at all of like who I'm really trying to target?
I have not seen that problem. The only problem I've seen I've joined a couple of different communities, including some of the Slack groups too. The only issue that I've seen is that now my feed, when I want to see content from specific people, I don't see the same people. Like I know there are people that I used to engage with, and their content doesn't rise to the top anymore as much. It's more so the people who are really popular who are popping up on my feed. So I now have to search out the people that I used to enjoy engaging with. Although the algorithm is really sophisticated, so the more you like specific stuff, the more you'll see it. You just have to make sure to like with intention, because whatever you like, it's going to start popping up much more frequently, including from certain people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's one thing I'm noticing too is I'm like interviewing for some role in California, but like it's like kind of a remote role that like we've been talking about. But now because like I like engaged with that and applied through it and you know saved the job, now all my LinkedIn jobs are like California, California, California. I'm just like, okay, like we're a little off, but we're getting close.
Yeah, get a little antsy LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You can set up alerts, I think, job alerts, where you can decide where you want your stuff to come from, whether it's remote, which is really cool. They have a remote option now, because I was checking it out before I started my current role. But have you turned on the recruiter, you're open to recruitment feature? Yep. So I actually found my current position through that. So I've found my last 2 or 3 positions that I've had, like full-time positions, through LinkedIn, mainly through the recruiter piece. And people have reached out to me because they've seen my posts, they've seen that I'm active. Even now that I don't have the recruiter option checked, I've had a few people reach out to me, like just because they're like, I've seen your content, I really like your content. And they've reached out to me and been like, are you satisfied in your current job? Are you looking? So by positioning yourself and sharing your thoughts and just coming across as, wow, this person's really smart, or I enjoy engaging with this person, they're friendly, they respond to my comments, I have fun talking to them, you'll get a ton of, I think, opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. So usually we have 3 people. I don't necessarily want to like make it go an hour if it doesn't need to go an hour. So Andy, yeah, I would post more, man. You have a lot to say, and you have like that Sandler stuff. You don't have to be like, hey, this is Sandler. You can just be like, you know, do it all day, man. We'll do it together. Like,
yeah,
you know, like how do I apply Sandler to the job search? Boom. Like, how do I do that? How do I get an interview using some of these methods? You don't have to say Sandler, but you should be posting about this stuff. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, because
like, be surprised.
Because it was one of those things too, and like we kind of talked about at the beginning, the imposter syndrome, because it's really weird, like when you get laid off from a job, like all this like negative thoughts and like head trash kind of comes in, and then you're like, well, I did so well here, but now like I don't have like a backdrop at all. It's like, who does care what I have to say, and you know, who's going to challenge me on this? So like it's like that you're like walking a tightrope a little bit.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is we're talking a lot about LinkedIn, and I don't want to split your energy like we were talking about before. You really should kind of go all in on focusing on one. But I found a lot of success lately. I've been dabbling on Twitter a little bit more as well. I'm finding a lot of job opportunities being posted to Twitter as well. So that I'm not spending too much time, I really do focus primarily on LinkedIn, putting my content out there on LinkedIn, building relationships in my network there. But I have a list. You can create a list on Twitter of just different categories, like marketers. I have like a list of marketers. I have a list of people I'd like to talk to if I ever were to start a podcast, like you were talking about. If I ever started a podcast, who would I want to talk to? And just putting special guests on there. People who talk about business, investing, finance. There are a lot of people posting jobs specifically to LinkedIn or to Twitter. Which is cool, because then you have a way to, like, Twitter is so casual compared to LinkedIn. People will post a lot more about, you know, oh, today I'm gaming, I'm playing XYZ video game, and, you know, they just post a lot more human whatever, like random thoughts that they're thinking. So there's a lot of research you can do on people to see what they like, and then use that as a talking point when you're having conversations with them. Like, oh, hey, I saw that you went to a game the other week, or you went to a virtual concert, you watched the Fortnite Travis Scott concert and I thought it was awesome too. And then you
Yeah.
can use that as like an opener to sort of lower their guard. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's always very like, it's kind of more buttoned up, very professional. So you might want to consider just creating some list on Twitter of people, brands that you want to keep an eye on, and just like sort of following them there. It really saves you a lot of time to have the list, because you can go straight in, click on your list, and just see content from the important people that you want to keep an eye on, as opposed to going into Twitter and just getting that explosion of just crap, all
Yeah.
the stuff that's just going on. So I found that really helpful. I try to take a lot of the jobs that I see there and share them to some of the networks that I'm connected with, like Rev Genius.
Sure.
I'll post a lot of the jobs that I see there to the channels there, in case there's someone who doesn't feel like mining through Twitter. I try to pull them and share them.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let me see this here. It seems, Chantelle, like you're a pretty natural writer. It's kind of like what you do, in your job. And it seems like you kind of have like a flow. If you're someone who isn't like a natural writer, or just you haven't done it in a while, at least in this context, like, do you have any advice for people that maybe aren't so strong in that area that want to get better?
I find that almost everyone can tell a story or can speak about something if they're passionate about it. We all spend a lot of time in our career, and I'm sure that you've got some sort of thoughts or expertise or skills or tips or tricks that you've picked up in your job, that if someone were to ask you, well, what do you think about, the best way for someone in your role to be productive? What's something that you feel your manager could do better to support you? Just what are your favorite tools that you use throughout the day? Some of your favorite apps or products or whatever. You could answer that if we were talking about it. I think writing down, just not worrying about, oh, is this completely grammatically correct? Is this the most perfectly composed piece of writing that's ever been written or will ever be shared on LinkedIn? And putting that together and just worrying about conveying the information. I think that takes down a lot of the pressure off of people. If you look at LinkedIn, a lot of people aren't like these superb writers, and nobody really cares. I've seen posts shared that have thousands of likes, and sometimes I'm reading them and I'm like, I'm not quite sure I understand everything that this person is saying, but I get in general where they're going with this. And it still resonates. It still has an impact, because it's the intent behind what they're writing, I think. I also think that social media has helped a lot, because you can't be perfect when you're writing a ton of tweets a day, and there are errors in all sorts of. I saw a tweet from Twitter. I was looking at their investor report or whatever the other day. They had an error in one of their tweets, and they had to come back and do a correction a couple tweets later. So I think the focus is less on perfection and more about what you're communicating. So I would just focus on, what are you trying to say, and get that out. And as you post more over time, as you read more posts from other people, you'll slowly develop like more skill at writing and finesse the way that you're sharing things. Like I know that now like you were saying, where it's like line, white space, line, white space. I find that people respond really well to that, because I guess it's just more, you can just quickly skim that and read it and then just keep going. You're not sitting there trying to like get through like five sentence paragraphs and like absorb that information. Right now, a lot of us just don't have the brain cells or the energy to absorb a ton of information. So it's just a format that's picked up on LinkedIn and taken off. So I would just worry about more so, what story are you telling, and is it a good story? Is the information that you're sharing something that's actually valuable? And don't worry about the grammar, don't worry about the spelling. If somebody wants to, make fun of you for not using they, their correctly, then they're probably not someone who you really want to worry about in your network anyway.
I bet you can go into their posts and see how they did it. It's interesting, because I think about this a lot too. And I think it is a time blocking thing. And like, I do want to get better at blocking out that time. My goal was to post at least once a week. I do want to up that a little bit. And I wonder if, and I don't know, Chantelle, if you've come across this, but, you know, like Andy mentioned, or Linda kind of mentioned too, like, I don't necessarily think the right way to think about it is like, I'm going to post something and then see how many people like it or watch it or engage with it, and then go back, take a look. Like, yes, of course you want to be watching for those kinds of things. You don't want to just be like posting like for a year and nobody ever, that's a problem. But like, to look at the little micro moments and just like every single post, like, is this perform? Oh man, it's not performing well. Like, I feel like that's going to hurt you more than help you. So another way of looking at it might be to just like pick one person and just say, I'm going to write posts that benefit this person, and they're going to be the ones that are in my mind. And I'm going to write my posts. And maybe even it's somebody that you know and that you reach out to and you're like, hey man, or hey girl, I'm going to send you my post every day, or I'm going to ping you when my post goes up, you know, give me your blessing. If it's helpful for you, then I know it can be helpful for whatever, thousands of other people. But at least you're not putting so much pressure on yourself to just like try to please everyone.
I feel like I need to actually start doing that, because right now I post for me. I'm like, I really like this. This is really interesting. And then I'll just post it. And sometimes I get lucky and a lot of people like it. And sometimes I crash and burn and like I'll get 4 likes and one of them is my husband. So, I mean, it's kind of hit or miss.
I think that's like that's like the holy, not like the holy grail, but like that's like the ideal situation. Like I guess ideally you would just be posting for yourself. Like you wouldn't care. You wouldn't need the external validation from somebody else. Like, but I feel like that, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but like that must have come with time. It's not like your first post ever, you were like, I'm posting this for me. I don't care who likes it. Like there had to be some like, man, like, is this going to resonate? Like, how is everyone going to react to this? And then after a while you were like, after you kind of got dirty a little bit and like, you know, got hit and you were like, oh, this actually isn't that bad. Then finally you were like, screw it. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just going to post for me. And like, but I feel like you have to get there, right?
Like I said, I was a lurker for a real long time. Like I would just read everything else that people were sharing. And I think at a certain point you look at stuff that like the influencers, the people with who are doing major numbers, you look at the stuff that they post and you're like, that isn't that much more insightful than something I could offer to someone who is in my role. So like, I feel like all of us do our jobs every day and you pick up so much knowledge and just things that you don't realize are actually really smart and really insightful that help you to excel at what you do and make you good at what you do. And you want to highlight those, because not only are recruiters looking for those, but you know, people who are also doing similar positions, people in college, you know, other people would benefit from that knowledge. And I think that it's just about watching other people and seeing what is performing, like sort of studying what's the conversation like in my community, in the community that I'm trying to talk to. Like the D&I community, what are people talking about here? How are they framing it? How are they talking about things? And then sort of trying to join that community using a language that makes sense to that community, if that makes sense.
Love that. Awesome. So we're going to totally like follow up and call you guys out and be like, hey, where's the post? Hopefully that's okay. But I want to say thank you guys for jumping in. I know like even just doing these kinds of things aren't always like at top of mind, not always in your comfort zone. So I really appreciate you guys jumping in. I will share the video with you guys afterwards, and you can feel free to use this content as well. Like share it, post it. You know, I would encourage the first post. What others have done is they'll come out of these types of sessions, either this one or another one, and just post what you learned. These were the top 3 things. Like you probably have some notes that you wrote down. Share that with others, right? Like we want to see, it even helps me. Think of me when you post it. Like if I'm going to take the summary and go send it to my team and be like, this is what we covered in today's session. Like, what would that look like? That's a very easy next post if you guys wanted to jump into it.
And tag us. LinkedIn likes when you tag your friends and they like it, it'll get a boost. So if you tag me, I'll like anything. I'll comment and I'll tag more people. So feel free to tag me and I'll try to boost you guys.
Love it. Thank you so much, Chantelle, for jumping in. I know you're doing a million things.
Thank you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. And thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.